That's one too.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today is Wednesday, April the 12th, 2023. We are at a work session of the Board of Trustees of Harlandale ISD. My name is Norma Cavazos. I am the school board president. It is 6:15 and I'm calling this meeting to order. And we are going to take roll call by using our electronic little devices. So can you open up, please, the vote for roll call? Okay, so it is now open, and if you're here, press one, I guess. I'm trying to press one, but. Okay, there. Okay, so seems everybody already made themselves present. Can we close? Thank you. So we have 7 trustees in today's meeting. We do have a quorum. Mr. Soto, would you let us know who's here, please?
Madam Chair, Board of Trustees, HISD Community. This evening, we have our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance, Mr. Richard Hernandez.
Here.
We have our Executive Director of Operations, Dr. Hinojosa.
Here.
We have our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Ms. Casey.
Here.
We have our Public Information Officer, Mariana Vieira.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. Moving on, we also have Dr. Judy Castleberry here. Dr. Castleberry.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 2, public comment. Did anybody sign up for public comment, Ms. Patty?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so no one signed up for public comment today. Okay, moving on to agenda item 3 is the board will conduct a work session with the superintendent and staff. That gets us to agenda item 4. The board will hear updates to student boundaries. Mr. Soto?
Yes, Madam Chair, Board of Trustees. At this time, we're going to have Mr. Littlefield that's been working with the demographer on some new student boundary. There's a couple of options that we're going to present, and clearly one option stands out that we're going to recommend for us to implement starting for the 23-24 school year.
Good evening, everybody. So we have been working with Davis Demographics to look at the impact of the repurposing of the 4 campuses. So this first map is the initial boundaries as they stand right now.
1 second, Mr. Littlefield. And Board of Trustees, the rationale behind it not being in your board book, we've been working on this like last second. We've asked the demographers to put a rush on this. They've been working on it even before the school repurposing, but they had to finalize it, and then we got it hot off the press. And I met with CNI, kind of went over this. There was a couple of tweaks, so it'll be given to you in hard copy, but as of right now, it'll be presented on the screens.
So it's literally off the press.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Littlefield.
As a matter of fact, we had gotten an email from them at like 4:25 today. So these are the 4 areas that are going to be impacted by the change in campuses: Columbia Heights, Rayburn, Carroll Bell, and Morrill. So what we did, the first draft that they did was basically a pure absorption type idea. All of Columbia Heights would go to Stonewall Flanders, all of Morrill would go to Adams, all of Rayburn goes to Vestal, and all of Carroll Bell goes to Bel Air. In this particular model, where we have one campus completely absorbing another campus, what we run into is that Adams, Bel Air, and Vestal all get maxed out to the point where any new families that move in would immediately have to be transferred over as overflows to other campuses. So they can currently handle absorbing another campus, but in doing so, it allows absolutely no room whatsoever for growth. So what they did then is they went back and they took a look at a second draft. And what the second draft does is it basically divides the campuses into different zones. So looking at this, and I'll be honest with you, it took us a little while to kind of figure out what we were looking at. The black lines are the current boundaries. The colors will indicate the new boundaries. So in order to kind of break this down, I'm going to go ahead and look at this by quadrants. So let's take a look at the northwest corner. Columbia Heights would be divided between Collier and Stonewall Flanders. In the draft that we have right now, Stonewall would be the division line between those two. Collier would gain about 155 students, taking them up to a little bit over 500. And then Stonewall Flanders would gain 145 students, taking them to approximately 524. This, of course, still leaving room for pre-K to grow and expand. Some of the other things that we've been talking about with Davis Demographics is, there's a lot of, if you look at our boundaries, we have a lot of, zigs and zags and grab this block, but leave that block. Or there's even some places where we take one side of the street and not the other. So we asked them, as you were working on this, if we could kind of start cleaning some of this up. So one piece, there's a small little piece on the other side of I-35 that had been going to Stonewall Flanders. So that actually gets broken off, gets moved over to Adams. And then Rayburn actually crossed over to the other side of the highway. And so that would actually be severed off from that region. And those then would be going to Collier. Yes, ma'am.
My immediate question is, so you're telling me that there's a part that is on one side of I-35 and you want those kids to go to the other side of I-35?
No,
okay.
currently they're on the wrong side of 35. And they're currently going to Stonewall Flanders. And it's really, we asked, there's like 2 kids there. And we don't know why, but that's the way it's been.
Now, Mr. Littlefield, as we discussed, just to let the Board of Trustees know, any child that is at their current school can remain at that current school. That's what we spoke about, right?
Yes, yeah, we bring it up towards the end as far as grandfathering. Okay, so that would be the change over the northwest corner. This one's a fairly simple one. The division of Columbia Heights is fairly simple to do. Just kind of half goes to one side, half goes to the other side. Next, the northwest area. Morrill had some very interesting boundaries. And so Morrill is pulling students from both sides of South Florida Street. What demography is suggesting then is that South Flores becomes the boundary between Adams and Gilbert. So the upper part, including that part, on the other side of the zigzags, that all would be going to Adams. Adams gains about 108 students, which would take their enrollment to approximately 670. Then the other side of South Flores would go to Gilbert. So Gilbert then gains about 181 students, taking them up to about 615.
I have
Yes.
a question. So what on Adams, it's going to go up to 670? Is that, can I see that right?
Yes,
It's
yes.
going up to 670 and their max capacity is what?
It's right around 900.
Thank you.
Then we get to the central part of the district. Carroll Bell holds students from both sides of Pleasanton Road. So this version of the redraw takes students on the western side of Pleasanton and rezones them to Bel Air, while students on the eastern side of Pleasanton gets rezoned to Wright Elementary. Bel Air gains about 248 students to, no, this is, yes. So,
Can we start all over on this slide?
yes, so
Fresh
Carroll
start,
Bell.
fresh start.
Carroll Bell, just north of the Bel Air region, the western side of Pleasanton gets rezoned and they go to, okay, I got you. And yeah, they go to Bel Air. And then on the eastern side, they get rezoned and go to Wright. Yes, that is what we were talking about. So this is about as zoomed in as we have on it, the overall map. Yes. So So what would be going on is Wright actually becomes kind of a large area, but in fact has very few students. So yes, this piece here actually will go over to Wright, north of Memphis. And then this piece here would break off and go into Belfast.
Sir, if I could just add something, Wright becomes what Rayburn was. So currently where Rayburn is, they pull from both sides of military. That's just moving to Wright, kind of the same scenario.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of it really had to do with the location of the four that were closed. And if you shift. Correct. Yeah. But once you did that, then you have no place to push up. Right. Okay. Now, on this last one, we know that there's still some work to do. The Rayburn area is actually rather difficult to begin with. Rayburn basically contributed to all four middle schools at some point or another. And so it was already sort of, kind of strange as far as its boundaries. So students west of I-35 get rezoned to Collier. Okay, there's that one is pretty simple and pretty obvious. Students east of Pleasanton and south of Candela would be rezoned to Wright Elementary. So again, Wright will take in a little bit more, but that's not a very large population in that particular zone. It's just that corner there over on the far right-hand side. And then the rest of Rayburn would be rezoned to Vestal. The problem with that is that this takes Vestal very close to its max. And so in our conversation with Davis Demographics, what may actually happen is on the northern part of the Rayburn boundary, there may need to be a split somewhere along where, and that group would actually end up going to Adams in order to relieve some of the numbers that are going into Vestal. So in doing this, the way that it's set up right now, Vestal would gain 299 students under the way it stands right now, taking them to approximately 600 or 598 students, which is pretty close to what their capacity is. Because of this, the northern part of Rayburn zone may need to be shifted to Adams, and Wright may need to take a little bit more off of the side there. So over on the right-hand side, they may need to shift over just a little bit more, but they're looking at it right now to determine how many students would be in that pocket. Collier would gain a total of 155 students, taking them to 519, and then Wright taking a total of 156 from all of its different moves and taking their enrollment up to about 526. So if I go back to this particular slide, now that you've had sort of a chance to look at it by quadrant, if you look at it in terms of, the entire big map, there's not a whole lot going on with Gillette. The only thing that happens to Gillette is that strange block that had been zoned to Vestal for who knows how long. Gillette absorbs them, and apparently there's 14 students there. So there's not a huge change upon Gillette. On Schultz, one piece that they were looking at is, wait, did I learn how to turn the laser? No. Middle button. Got it. This piece right here of Schultz is an area that is difficult in terms of transportation logistics. And so one part of the discussion is possibly breaking that piece off and having them also go to Wright. There's about, 25 students? About 24 students in this area, which may, we're still trying to figure out exactly what to do with them.
Mr. Littlefield,
Yes.
when you said, it's, transportation is a little tricky, what do you mean by that?
And, Dr. Hinojosa would be able to, speak much better about this. But when we're talking about looking at who gets bused, major roads come into play. And so, once we start dealing with kids are on one side of Pleasanton and kids are on the other side of Pleasanton, the kids on one side get bused, the others don't. And the campus could be, a half mile away, but we're still busing kids because of the major intersections.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Excuse me, can you point out which, because I can't read it. I'm terribly
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's fine.
Where is Schultz on this? Is it the yellow or the red?
Yeah, this
That's
is Schultz.
That's Schultz.
Yes.
Okay. And the yellow is Gillette.
This is Gillette.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the two southern campuses really don't see a major impact. And as a matter of fact, in our 425 email with Davis, we asked about this huge chunk over here because they all belong to Wright. And they said there's about 11 kids in there. And actually, most of them are already going to Schultz via transfers. So, we'll probably just go ahead and, send the entire airport area to Schultz automatically. So that's one other change that we're looking at. The other piece that we've asked Davis Demographics is in terms of like this little sliver here of blue of Adams, or these jutting out little areas of Wright. Again, you're crossing a major street in order to get, these kids over to Wright. Does it make more sense to cut these off and give these over to Gilbert? And again, there's about 24 students that would be impacted in that particular move.
Madam Chair. So you're moving kids is already at a school that's not closing. You're gonna move those kids out to another school? And it doesn't affect these schools that are closing? So I don't understand how you going to affect the kids that has nothing to do with this closing of the school. You're gonna move them.
And so it's almost like I paid you to transition for me. Students currently enrolled in an active campus and we rezone that area. They can be grandfathered to stay at their active campus. What it would do is really just change if that family moves out, whatever family moves in then would go to the designated campus for that zone. And so it wouldn't impact the people, it would only impact those that are currently moving in. When they move into their house, they would be told, this is your campus, as opposed to what they were grandfathered in.
So do they have an option to stay or to go?
The current students, yes. Yes, they, if we say this boundary has belonged to Wright and now we're switching it over to Gilbert, yeah, the family can say, we want to stay at Wright, and that would be honored.
Madam Chair. Mr. Littlefield, I do have a question. I thought we didn't have any more zonings in our district that any child can go to any campus of their choice. Am I still correct on that?
It's almost like I paid you for that transition. So in the last bullet, if students wish to attend a different campus from where they are zoned, they may apply for an in-district transfer to attend the campus of their choice, but the approval of that will be based on the number of seats. So if I have a second grade class, all my second grade classes are already at 22, and a child, no, I want to come to this campus, the campus then has the right to say, there's no more seats. You need to attend your campus. Okay. Naturally, of course, the dust is, there's still, we're still in the process of trying to figure this out. My office has been getting calls since the last board meeting, where's my child going? And we got them like the next morning. And I was like, it's been 12 hours. I don't know. We're working on it though. And we were fortunate in the fact that Davis Demographics had all of our information for the past several years. When they're redrawing these boundaries, they're not looking at the students that we have. They look at the students that we have had and the students that we currently have. There's just some pockets of, Harlandale where there just haven't been children for a long time. And so, as it ebbs and flows. So, there's been a lot of thought going into this, but there's still some revisions that we want to make and kind of clean things up. So once we got all that figured out, parents will be notified of attendance zones, communications with parents regarding options for school enrollment. There's an FAQ that's already been started and will eventually be shared out. And then, of course, staffing allocations will be finalized based on the projections of each campus. The report that we got actually this afternoon told us, using these boundaries, Adams would have this many in kinder, this many in first, this many in second, this many in third. So we can actually finally get, some sense of, yes, we're moving 150 kids, but what does that look like in terms of counts as far as their grade levels? So we can start looking at allocations for that. So then the next steps, of course, we'll continue working with them. We're going to optimize boundaries to avoid having to overload students, smooth out some of the boundaries. Davis Demographics will actually assist us in optimizing bus routes. And then finally, they will provide us a file so that they can download all of our information. We can upload it directly into our student information system and then get that updated as quickly as possible.
Mr. Littlefield, I have a question. And this may not be the time for me to ask. And if it's not, tell me it's not the time. We should not be anticipating the possibility of any waivers presented to the board.
I will defer to Miss Melissa Casey.
I would say we have never had a year with no waivers. So I can say that because what we would do then, the option, we've actually had principals ask for waivers so we don't overload students. So we will have quite a bit of leveling, particularly if we have parents that want to transfer. We are looking at freezing our in-district transfers for the first 3 weeks until we see where everyone is at. But I do not want to commit to that because we've never had a year of no waivers.
And redirect me if I'm out of my lane. Have we always had the need to use those waivers? I know that we approve them in case of the need.
But we have always had waivers, and the waivers we bring are the ones we have to have where we don't move students. And our goal every year is to reduce the number of waivers. With the fact that we're closing 4 schools, we anticipate parents to want to transfer. I think that we can expect there's going to be quite a bit of leveling at the beginning of the year, which our goal is to kind of smooth that out now. But I do anticipate us having some leveling at the beginning.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yes.
Mr. Soto, I'd like to see another proposal in the sense of especially on the Rayburn dissection of the zone. I'm just using my marketing skills, marketing analysis. Stores put certain location because of either certain factors, and I think that's pretty here in this idea because we don't want our students and grandmas and grandpas especially having to cross high frequency streets, especially like Military Drive. So I know my experience, we have a lot of walkers in our district, and so that would be something I try to analyze, even though I know that one school might have maybe 50 more than the other one, but just for safety's sake, just for transportation's sake, we can look into that. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Luna. Speaking on transportation, we're looking at also kind of like we did with our summer transportation, where we provide a bus at those schools that are going to be repurposed. So having a school bus there for some of those individuals that were able to walk to Rayburn, they can jump on the bus, and then they can, if they need to go cross the Military, they'll be on a bus to go to the other school. So we're looking at transportation the way we use it during summer on some of those repurposed campuses.
Madam Chair. So, Mr. Soto, you just kind of hit on it. I know when I was in school, especially before football season started, in high school especially, a lot of my friends that were going that were actually supposed to go to Harlandale, but went through the public school, like the leadership school. They would get picked up at Harlandale, just like our other certification programs. Get picked up there. So I think that would actually be a really good idea. If we can do that to support them for a while. I don't know how long we can logistically do that, but I think that would be beneficial just to kind of transition into a more concrete plan. I think that would give you guys time to really smooth out, because I know at the beginning of the year, it's crazy. And then we have people coming in, people coming out, people deciding this, people deciding that. And but when we look at the area, are we looking less than 2 miles more or less for children to travel potentially? I don't know if you would know that, Mr. Littlefield or Dr. Hinojosa.
Yeah, that was one of the, when Davis was talking about the work that they do, that was one of the things that they look at is, trying to keep a neighborhood together and then trying to keep it within 2 miles. In the case of Wright, it doesn't really work out that way. But for a lot of the other campuses, it does.
And for perspective, I don't know who would know this, but just to give an example, could y'all share possibly how long it is that the students will be riding the bus? Or what's the longest ride?
So we haven't completely come to the conclusion on that because we're gonna base it off what is
But
decided.
just in general, Dr. Hinojosa, like now, because I want to give perspective on how long our kids are on a
Yeah,
bus
and
compared to y'all's.
yeah, I will get with Mr. Gonzalez and I'll have that for you. I can provide on HH because honestly, we haven't really put a pencil to it. We've just been looking at which of those, what are considered the roads to cross.
Yeah.
The considered dangerous roads, but we're anticipating to be able to, whether we go through the process of setting up the shuttle. And those are some of the things we're trying to put a time on, so we can definitely get that for you.
All right, fantastic. So just to give you some context, some of my bus riders at my campus are on a bus for upwards of an hour. So I don't think our kids are nowhere near that. But that's to give you some kind of perspective on how close the proximity our schools really are. Not only that, but a lot of times our buses are late. We get there. We start at 8:15. Some of our buses, we finally got it all under control. We got a fantastic director over there. He's finally put it all together, but we were getting our kids at 8:30, 8:45 when we started 8:15. So just to kind of give you guys perspective, when I know some of our families kind of consider like, hey, this isn't cool, this isn't great. The reality is we're in a much better situation than some other neighboring districts.
Mr. Soto, will we get this proposal in HH?
We can send this, but again, there's gonna be some changes and yeah, it's a living document as of right now. But
So this is not going to be a consent item on Monday then?
correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I guess that's it. You have a question. As this proposal is going to be adjusted, tweaked, you will update us?
Yes, yes. The beauty of it is I have a secure site that I can log into. And as soon as we ask for a proposal, they can change it immediately. So, what you saw tonight were screenshots off of that page. But yeah, there is a dynamic page that's going on in the background.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to agenda item 5, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This evening, we're presenting the budget amendments for the April meeting. The first budget amendment is to have the district be in compliance with our funding sources of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. With those federal dollars, there's several compliance requirements that the district needs to meet. And in this particular compliance requirement is that students from low income backgrounds do not experience a disproportionate reduction of funding from 2021 through the end of the ESSER funding periods of 2024. And also the largest share of students from low income backgrounds do not receive a decrease in state funding below their 2018-19. This is what we brought to the board last year around this time. As we get towards the end of the year, we have to complete what's called a maintenance of equity. And in doing that, as we did last year, the funds are budgeted or recommended for approval, and the teacher units are also recommended for approval. Doesn't mean that those are going to be completed or fulfilled, but it just a step that we need to take in order for us to be compliant. So in the first budget amendments, it's requesting to increase the budget for the Stonewall Flanders Elementary. There was one traditional campus that came under this requirement to increase the budget by 384,450 and to increase the teacher units by 9. Last year, we had 2 special population campuses, which was Finley Transition and the Tejeda High School. So again, it's just an item that we need to provide in our budget, but not necessarily need to utilize those funds. The next budget amendments are budget amendments within the department's allocation. The first one is with the math department. They've met their staff development needs, and they see that there's some funds available that can be redirected to buy summer school instruction with math manipulatives. And so that's reducing their staff development in function 13 and increasing the function 11 by 18,878. The special ed department, again, within their campus department allocation, no increase to the budget, are redirecting funds that they set aside to provide health services to the special needs students and put them into direct instruction, which would include providing services to special needs students for speech therapy, occupational and physical therapy, and behavior management and other intervention services. This would be an amount of 38,000 as a budget amendment. The third budget amendment is then budgeting grant monies that we received from the Law Enforcement Office Standards Education. This year, we received $1,661, and over the past 3 years, we've received grant funds that have been utilized, but not to the full amount. And so we've been carrying over that amount, and so it's being budgeted for $3,682. These funds need to be used to ensure the continuing education and training of our full-time law enforcement personnel. The next budget amendment is regarding our child nutrition. Again, we still have available to us the American Rescue Plan Act that provides federal monies to our National School Lunch Program for equipment assistance. The total grant amount is for $82,560. It'll buy various equipment from food disposal systems, dishwashers, and coolers, and it'll be placed at high schools and elementary schools. The next budget amendment is relating to our donations sub-fund. There we track donations that are made at campuses or departments. In this case, we had a donation of $500 from Los Gallegos to support our What's Next symposium that the district conducted. The last budget amendment is related to our debt service. And this is more of an accounting requirement. Each year, we need to budget what we pay in principal amount for what we call our qualified school construction bonds that were issued in 2009. And we budget the principal and interest payments in order to compute what we would have to require in a tax rate and also what to draw down in our state funding. After the payments made, which was done in February, then the accounting treatment for this is to reverse that out and actually record it as an asset, because in August of 2026, the amount of principal payments that have been made over the life of this bond will then be made in one lump payment of $11,990,000. So those are the budget amendments that are presented this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Carrillo.
I do have a question in regards to the budget amendment, special education. In regards to monies, are we not receiving any monies from the state, sir?
Yes, we get a state allotment for the various services. What this budget amendment is actually just moving monies between what we call a functional cost. So we're staying within the budget. But to go to your question, we actually received a recent additional monies from the state for special needs students that we needed to place and under special services that were high cost. And so the state provides that type of relief.
And this was per student or just a lump sum for the district? If,
In this particular case, it was for a particular student that required the special needs for them at a high cost. And so we submitted that to the state because that's available to school districts. And they evaluate the grant that we submitted and they awarded the district for that.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Mr. Hernandez, I have a couple of questions. And I just want to get clarification. So on both the on the math department, we are not shortchanging staff development. They have already obtained all the staff development that they were required to, and the monies left over for that particular purpose is going to be moved to purchase student resources.
Yes, ma'am.
I couldn't think of the word. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're not shortchanging the staff development. We just had monies left over. Guess what? Let's take that money left over and buy this stuff for our students because they will need it.
Yes, ma'am, in the
Okay.
summer.
And then I have another question. And I know it says there, but I just want to make sure the child nutrition, that 82,560, that's a grant. That is not coming out of our own district money.
Correct. That's a
Okay.
federal grant.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Hernandez, but I think we have you on the next one, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The next item is asking the board to approve a resolution between the district and Wells Fargo for the extension of the depository contract for an additional 2-year term beginning July of 2023 through June of 2025. The funding estimate for this is 45,000 and it's from the general fund budgeted funds. What this service does is that it's a depository contract that the district actually entered back on and the board approved back on 2017. TEA allows school districts to extend the contract with the depository over 3 for 2 1-year periods. And so we're in the last extension that's allowed by TEA. The benefit to this is that we've got basically we do all our online banking for the district and for the individual campuses because each campus has their own bank account. It also provides us the online investment processes that are valuable to the district. And there's really only one other depository that provides that kind of services. But at the same time, we have with this depository a program that's called a sweep, where any monies that are left over overnight are invested in a money market, which then earn interest for us and bring in about 20,000 each month with this process that Wells Fargo has with the district. So we're recommending to continue for the last extension, and then in the spring of 2025, we go out for bids, and then we'll evaluate depositories again.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. That was going to be my question.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody, any comments or questions for Mr. Hernandez on this particular agenda item? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hernandez. You're on the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
The next item is what we bring each year. Basically, we have in our board policy, both under legal and local, the investment policies and strategies. There have been no changes since last year. So again, we're presenting these for board approval, review and approval of the policy investments in the strategies.
Mr. Hernandez, when you say there have been no changes,
Yes, ma'am.
Can
And
you-
sure. And so what the policies and strategies, what they do is basically provide the board or they provide the district kind of like a guidance when it goes through its investment processes. So in your board book on page 35, basically is our local policy. And so it addresses, who has the investment authority, what kind of investments we can make, how long we can hold our investments, the diversification of them, what we need to do to monitor as we make these investments. So it gives us a guidance as we go through our investments. So again, what we also look to the state is that they also have legal requirements the district needs to follow. So if any legal requirements come down, then we incorporate them into our local policy. So what I'm stating is that from last year to now, there have been no additional state requirements that would require us to incorporate them into our local policy.
So it's business as usual because the state has not required any additional.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Yes,
you
ma'am.
for explaining that. I just
Yes.
wanted to make
Yeah,
sure. Thank you.
absolutely.
Any questions or comments to Mr. Hernandez on agenda item 7? Okay. Agenda item 8, is that you, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You're busy tonight, Mr.
Yes,
Hernandez.
ma'am. It is a busy evening. The next item is related to our qualified brokers and investment pools. Again, a requirement under our CDA legal that we just covered. We have to present to the board and adopt a list of qualified brokers and organizations that are authorized to engage in investment transactions. Now, along with preparing for this process, we obtained from them an executed written agreement that they've received and they've reviewed our policies. And this way it ensures and provides controls in place that there aren't any type of investments that they would recommend for the district to do that would be in violation of our policies. Now, that's just one measure to check. We also check that ourselves. The other thing that they also provide is that they're registered with the Texas State Securities Board. They're members of the Security Investor Protection Corporation, and that they are in good standing with the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, or what they call FINRA. So in the recommendation, we list the brokers. We have Hilltop Securities, RBC Capital, UBS Financial Services, and Wells Fargo. The pool that we use are what we call Lone Star Investment Pool, Logic, Texas Range Investment Pool, Texas Fixed Income, and Texas Class. Now, we have an assortment. We have 4 brokers, and intending and looking at best practices. Usually you want, 3 to 6 brokers available so you can get competitive rates. So each time we buy a security, we ask all 4 brokers to provide us their best investment quote. And so that way we always remain competitive and get the best interest rates that we can. On the pools, we utilize them to spread out our monies in order to, again, maximize returns with those investment pools. So that's what's being recommended for the board to review and approve.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
It says approval for 1 year. Is it always at a 1-year approval?
Yes, ma'am. That's part of our requirement under the policy.
And is this same list one that was approved last year?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And
How many times has it been this same list?
I would believe we've used this same group for the last 5 years.
Okay. Everybody on this list for the last 5 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And they're familiar with the district and the district cash flow needs and the type of securities that we look for.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions? Yes, Mr.
Mr. Nestor, are we allowed to know how much money-wise transactions we're doing with these brokers, investment pools, roughly?
Yeah, so when we buy securities, it depends what monies that we have available and when that cash will be needed. Again, we have in total up to 50 million that needs to be invested or during the time that it's not being used. So it's split between the investment pools, and as we buy securities, then we'll have those included. Now, a report is provided quarterly. So our next quarterly report is at next board's meeting for the quarter of January through March. And so on that report, it provides the community, the board, everyone, as to what investments that we have. Now, we can provide you the last quarter's report, and that way you can see, you know, a sense of, you know, what we have available.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions for Mr. Hernandez on this particular agenda item?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Carrillo.
I do have, and it's just gonna be kind of like a clarification of what Mrs. Goss is bringing up. So every single one of these brokers we have used for the last 5 past years, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there I know that they worked well together and they provided well service, but is there another pool? I mean, I'm just asking, okay?
Sure.
If we did not have this, would you be able to get another pool, you know, in line for us to, I guess, if this pool did not exist, would you be able to acquire another pool?
Sure. We would make an inquiry into basically other districts as to what brokers that they had experience with, and then compile a list and see if those would be ones that we'd be interested in looking at having them provide services.
Okay.
Sure,
just
that's
a
always
question,
available.
sir. Okay,
ma'am.
and thank
No,
you.
that's fine.
Thank you for that.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on to agenda item 9. Is it Ms. Martinez or Mr. Mora?
What, actually,
Oh, you
I'll
you
take
have.
that, but they'll be here. No,
Sorry.
that's quite all right.
I'm
They're-
so sorry.
They are here as a team to help answer any more questions that I may not be able to answer. But basically, since our department oversees the disposal of what we say equipment, we do the auctioning of equipment. In this particular case, it's the disposal of our technology equipment, which is a little bit more complicated than just doing an auction for furniture. And so we did an RFP for this type of services. It's RFP 2000069, and it's the destruction disposal of computer hardware, data, and miscellaneous electronics. And so what this RFP that's different than others is that actually this isn't a cost to the district. This is going out and finding what vendors are out there that will be able to dispose of our technology equipment and also try to maximize the amount of return that we would get in auctioning or providing, selling that equipment to them. And so in this case, as we went through and we had 5 vendors respond to this RFP, the 2 that we looked at and are recommending is Diamond Assets and that would be awarded the Apple retired assets, and Bass Computers that would be awarded the non-Apple retired assets. And the reason for the difference is because when you look at Diamond Assets, they have a program called Clarity that helps determine, and it's provided to us, determine the value of the equipment of what they should be paying the district for that. So we enter the serial numbers of the equipment that we've got, and then the program itself that's independent of Diamond Assets will give us a value, and that's what we would expect to receive from Diamond Assets on that equipment. The other vendor is Bass Computers, and then they would give us a best interest price on the non-Apple retired assets. And so this is being recommended for 1 year for us to evaluate how that service is. And then if meets our needs, then it is also being approved or being proposed to have 4 1-year renewal options. And again, it's not a cost, there's no direct cost to the district.
Mr. Hernandez, is there no direct cost to the district? Because it's gonna be a 1 year and then we'll revisit for the 4 year, or is it every year for 4 years, we're going to be revisiting the renewal?
Right. So the reason it's a no cost is because the equipment, for example, there are Apple iPads. We're going to enter into the program. How much should we get for that Apple iPad? Then Diamond Assets will be the ones that will pay the district for us to give them that equipment. So that's what we mean by no cost. We're not buying this equipment, we're selling it to them. So we
Okay.
just add the money back into our general fund.
That was gonna be my second question. Where is that money gonna go to? Okay,
in the general
thank you,
fund.
Mr. Hernandez.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions or comments to Mr. Hernandez on
Madam
this?
Chair.
Yes, Ms. Lim.
So we have a lot of equipment to have them for, 4 years? I mean, are we giving away, are we just all the old computers are going their way and then selling them. And every year we have a handful of computers that are going towards them.
Sure, and that's why we have a team effort. We got Ms. Martinez that can give us a rundown on the technology and where we stand on new computers, old computers, and how we rotate them to our system.
Madam Chair, Ms. Martinez has put a really good plan in place where once it reaches its life cycle, we end up replenishing it. So she'll go into detail on that.
Thank you. Yes, what we have is a 5-year life cycle, but we actually keep the equipment that 5th year. So basically we're replacing it every 6 years. So nothing that was bought, prior to that would be part of what we're selling back. Now, what we can do and what Diamond Assets and Bass will do is buy maybe damaged equipment that we don't want, because they strip it for parts and they use it, they'll use the parts inside. So rather than us having to pay for repairs, we just sell that and then we replace another one. But nothing is replaced before the 6 years birthday of the item. And if you look at our barcodes, we actually have a, what I call a date of birth on there. So every barcode that's out there has the year that it was purchased. And so it's just really easy for our staff and district staff to look and say, okay, I've got 2 more years left on this computer, this laptop, or whatever device we have out there. So,
Thank you.
Anybody else? I will mention that's exactly what the county does. And the barcode, we already know when they're gonna come and replace it, because it's best to have it replaced for a new one than to repair them. Yes, and so, yeah,
Yeah,
and
one
let me
of
tell
the
you,
things
sometimes they're so
is-
slow that we're eager, oh my gosh,
How
it's still
much
a year and a
longer?
half on that yet.
Yes, I get
Uh-huh.
that a lot.
Yes.
I
So
get that a lot.
that
Oh,
is a common practice in a lot of.
And I think one of the benefits, I think, to like curriculum and the students is that we need to be sure that the hardware is keeping up with the software, because the software is just getting more intelligent and, just harder to support with every year. And so we want to make sure the hardware is keeping up with that.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Any other questions for Mr. Hernandez or Ms. Martinez? No? Okay, moving on to agenda item 10. Is that Dr. Hinojosa?
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, so for this particular item that we'll be seeking for approval at the next board meeting is really next steps now that the repurposing decision has been made. So this particular item of using Rent-A-Cart Enterprises will be to provide the rental moving equipment to be able to efficiently move staff and their equipment to the new campuses where they would be located. So working with Mr. Mora and going through the by board contracts to be able to meet our local procurement requirements and state requirements, we were able to make a decision that Rent-A-Crate Enterprises would be at an estimated cost of $100,000 would be the best option for us to be able to facilitate that move. Now, the only thing that you will see different, I want to make note of the funding source on that we had at the time when these documents were related or were expected to be submitted for your review. We had been given initial information from our auditors that we would have to be able to use the funding sources that are listed, which are the maintenance tax notes. But since then, Mr. Hernandez worked with the auditors and we were able to just today, as a matter of fact, about an hour or so ago, get the correction from the auditors that we will be able to use the Proposition A for general facilities bond 2022 monies to be able to fund this source. So we will be making that adjustment to the background information where it'll read that we will use bond 2022 funds for the move.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Any questions for Dr. Hinojosa? I have a question. Why Armstrong relocation?
For the next item,
I meant Rent-A-Crate
Rent-A-Crate.
Enterprises. Yes, my apologies.
so if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Mora, you can. It's a team effort that Mr. Hernandez was referring to.
Good evening, Benjamin Mora, the purchasing manager. Rent-A-Crate is basically one of 2 major companies in the state of Texas that provide this type of equipment. This isn't your normal everyday moving equipment, dollies, et cetera. This is a system of moving that we are actually renting from that particular vendor. We've been using this vendor on and off for as long as I've been here. Can't say enough good words about it. It saves a lot of backs, no injuries. So
I was just curious. I just didn't know if it was out of 7, this is the one you like, but so there's only 2 that do this particular moving service. Yes.
So it's just the equipment. There's another item that comes after this, which is the actual services. We are not recommending Rent-A-Crate for the actual moving services. So, and that will be next.
You're using Rent-A-Crate for the product.
For the
Like, yeah,
crates, the
uh-huh,
carts,
yeah.
the
Everything
wrap.
that you need to put in to move, but not the actual physical moving.
correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mora.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Moreno.
So, and I guess I'll just kind of go with the next part, because that's what I noticed as well. So when it comes to with the facilities, I'm sure that comes with everything from equipment in the kitchen to equipment for the custodians to, I'm assuming also the teachers' items as well, or is that going to be?
Yes, sir. That's
inclusive?
an
So-
excellent point. So this particular item is going to be specifically for the teachers, to make sure that we have the classrooms ready. And obviously the support staff, the custodial equipment and all those things also will be, moved. But those are very particular specific items. So, we're going to share that responsibility with Rent-A-Crate, and then also, our crews in our divisions who will be able to handle them, I guess securely in terms of being able to be placed at the new campuses.
Yeah, a little bit more delicately than.
Yes, sir.
movers and
It'll be
things
their
that-
equipment, so they want to make sure it's transported.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So they just have to pack it and then you'll be able to pretty much facilitate the move.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, then that sounds great, sir, with everything y'all are doing.
Madam Chair. Question. So I know we're gonna have a lot of doubles of everything, from, when you close down Rayburn and they're gonna go to another school. All the equipment that we have double of, where are you gonna store all that? Do we have a warehouse big enough to do all that?
So yes, ma'am, it's an excellent point. So once we do move what the teachers' needs are going to be to service the classrooms, we're going to go back and reevaluate what's still on the campuses. And since we are going to have other departments and other, utilize the facilities, they will be able to utilize them as well. So it may not be all needed at a new school, but again, those schools, the repurposed schools will be housing the several departments. So the plan is to still be able to use that equipment for the departments that are going to be going in there.
Madam Chair. For example, Dr. Hinojosa, some of the offices that we have at Shea, the older building that we're about to demo, it's got built-ins, they're built into the wall. So those will not be able to be moved to where they're relocating. So some of this excess furniture that we'll have as teacher's desk and file cabinets that are excess, we can put those to use for some of those offices.
Sorry, that was a mistake. Mr. Soto reminded me of something that I have to remind myself that it's not just classrooms that are being moved. I keep forgetting that. I know that sounds awful, but all I'm thinking is classrooms, teachers, but there's departments that are moving too. And every department has furniture and has file cabinets and has everything. So I have to remember, it's not just the move of the classroom, it's the move of all the departments as well. So thank you for reminding me, Mr. Soto, because I was thinking, my God, all the classrooms, but no, it's departments too. So thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Hinojosa? Okay, Dr. Hinojosa, you're up on agenda item 11, correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am. And so this is just a segue from the previous conversation. So this would be the actual services by Armstrong Relocation that would actually relocate those items that are going to be created by the previous vendor or the services from the previous vendor. And again, this document would also get reworded with the funding source being from bond 2022 general facilities proceeds. So we will make those adjustments, and both these documents will have the proper language for the meeting at our next regular scheduled board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Any questions for Dr. Hinojosa on agenda item 11? Okay, moving on to agenda item 12. Is that Ms. Martinez?
Hello again. So I have the next 2 items, in item number 12. In 2015, the Harlandale community voted to approve a district-wide security project that was funded by the 2015 bond. The district contracted with Convergent Technologies to see that project through. The network equipment that was put in place to manage all of the cameras and controlled access has reached its usable life and it's starting to fail. That equipment is approximately 8 years old now. The goal of this project is to migrate the district's current video management system to a new and improved one. As part of this project, the current video recorders, the hardware that exists in schools and auxiliary sites, will be removed and replaced with a new Milestone Husky video recorders. The existing configuration and databases will be converted and loaded onto the new machines by Convergent support staff as part of the migration. The XProtect Professional Plus license is actually the video management software. It will allow us to combine the management of the cameras, alarms, and access controlled, thus simplifying the use for our operators while boosting the overall performance of the equipment. Information Services, along with the Harlandale Police Department, researched and tested various programs and products to replace the existing Linnell. We found that Milestone provided the best option for the district. It is the only video management solution with bidirectional integration with OnGuard, which is our access control, and support from Linnell themselves. The scope of work includes removal of the old equipment, installation and configuration of replacement servers, migration of databases, and staff training, as well as ongoing direct technical support. Staff recommends that the district purchase Milestone XProtect video management system at an estimated cost of $582,561 from Convergent via the Omnia Partners contract. Funding will be from the General Facilities Bond 2022 fund.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Moreno.
So just to clear up, Ms. Martinez, this is going to be pretty much our new like camera system, for security's purposes related to everybody having access from Chief Fernandez all the way to pretty much the administrators, that type of thing.
On campus, yes, sir. It manages the cameras, but it also manages the controlled access and even the alarm systems.
Also like the fobs to get in and everything like that too.
Correct. That is correct.
Sounds fantastic for us to be able to take that initiative and be able to spearhead some of these things. I'm kind of curious to see how the process is. I mean, now we're going to where it's going to be longer time where you can keep recordings and things like that because it's going to be like on a cloud and things like that, or is it going to be like where it's like 30 days and it's
No, the Husky solutions are still on-prem. There's still servers that are here, much more robust than what we have now. Currently, we have a server at each location. Some schools, like the high schools, have multiple servers. That requires a lot of attention. And so what has happened is as they fail, they used to have about a 30-day recording. 2 weeks was live, 2 weeks was compressed. As they fail, what my staff has done is they've rerouted that video to a neighboring school. And so therefore what we've done is reduce the amount of time from 30 days down to maybe 2 weeks. And so because they're sharing the space. And so what this does is it puts a new system that, as you said, would record much longer.
and
at
is it
much
just
higher.
motion censored stuff or
We can set that. We do set it to motion sensor because we don't want to record an empty room for 24 hours and then not record movement for, the rest of the time.
No,
So-
because I know in some cases, like what I find issues with when I'm reviewing video is that, a second or two gets lost, even though there's movement there. Or, I mean, it's not going to be a blotchy like that where you have to like look through and then I have to look at 4 different angles to find the angle I'm looking for what I'm looking for. And maybe even having the position. So we're going to have access to more cameras. I'm assuming we're going to be able to install more cameras. To me, I mean, I don't want to completely under surveillance, but I know we have blind spots everywhere.
Yes, we do. It was never, when we first, back in 2015, when we first did the security project, we were probably about 40% not covered. And so since then, of course, we've added cameras, through different funding sources. And part of this is actually to add more cameras. And so this particular brain or software will allow for that.
Well, I'm sure the kids will get wary of that, or catch wind of
They
it.
don't know which one's
But
nowadays.
it's great to know that the administrators will be able to utilize it to keep everybody safe and secure.
Yeah, and it's all based on programming, sir. So it's the frames per second. So if you are not recording continuously, then you are going to have those splotchies, but those splotchy spots are missing spots. But you can record more days. But if you reduce the number of days, then you can have a much better.
And I always tell people it's not like the movies where all of a sudden you get further and further in and then the pixelated just becomes super clear. But are we getting to that point ever where I'm zooming in and I can get a clear shot versus just, it pixelated?
So I have to say that the chief sat in on all the demos and he made sure that we could zoom in and see license plates. So,
Because I hate doing that. And I'm like, is that what I think it is? Or is it this?
yeah.
Because there's so many times I'm like, oh, I can't prove it. So I'm going to have to let it go.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes you can't even tell if it's a man or a woman. You just see a blue blotch, walking across the room. So this is much clearer.
Anybody else?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
Is any of this eligible for E-rate reimbursement?
No, not well, I say no. We have a limited, what E-rate has done is they've given us a finite amount of money every 5 years. And so that the funds that we get from them that are listed as category 2, which is equipment, usually goes for networking equipment and not a special, that's why we put this as a bond item, because there's just never enough money left over with E-rate, because we have to stretch that out for 5 years.
And one last question, ma'am, I'm sorry. Do you know how long the rollout's going to take for us to install all this?
Yes, and that's a great question. And so because we went with Milestone, and when I talked about it's a bi-directional integration, what that means is that we currently have Linnell and OnGuard. So Linnell is the video, OnGuard is the controlled access. They talk, or they have that field with Milestone that allows for a very seamless communication. And so what will happen, and part of the purchase is that the Convergence staff and the Milestone staff actually do this work for us, which is really nice, is they will be able to extract the existing data and the existing configurations from our system and then import it into the new one. So basically it's probably 60 to 65 days, and it will be done. If we went with a different vendor, we would literally have to rename every single camera, every single door, every single, motion detector, and it would take us hundreds of hours to get that done. So that's another reason why I was so excited for this product. And it was just really nice that the chief also liked it.
Anybody else? I have a couple of questions. Like everything else, this is technology. And so 8 years, we're due for what is available and updated everywhere else, correct? So this is part of us
It's a refresh.
evolving with the times and the technology. Is any of this, I know it says general facilities bond, but is there any type of safety money, or does the state allocate any, because this is for the security of our campuses, our students and teachers?
So we have, yes, ma'am, and we have actually partnered with Avance. And so Avance in their schools, what they're doing is they're not paying for the brains of it, which is what we're talking about here. But when we talked about there's a lot of blind spots, is they have actually awarded us or provided us, it's over $500,000 that we will use to add more cameras, to the hallways, to the outside. One of the things we're doing is replacing, these are 8 years old. So the indoor cameras are still good and they're compatible with the system. The outdoor cameras with the Texas sun, and they're beat up. And so that's where we see a blue thing walking across and can't tell if it's a man or a woman. And so what Avance has done is they've allotted us that $500,000 to replace almost all of the outdoor cameras in the Avance campuses, which are about 7 of them right now. They were 9 before. So yes, there are other monies. I know with federal funds, Ms. Reina Gallegos recently has a grant also that she's allotted money both to technology and to the police, for these purposes as well. So in this proposal, there are no cameras. It's really just the infrastructure. It's the brains, it's the software and the servers that are going to do the recording, the NVRs, the network video recorders.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Anybody else? Okay, moving on to agenda item 13.
Yes, that's me also. So our second request is that the board consider and approve the purchase of FortiVoice Secured Unified Communication Solution as the district's new VoIP system. VoIP is Voice over Internet Protocol. It supports the district-wide communication over the network. The purchase includes licenses, physical phones, contracted maintenance and service of switching, routing, and hardware for the entire VoIP network. So basically, we're not using analog phones anymore. We're using network telephones. So this replaces really everything up from the handset down to the network, down to the servers that do the work. So FortiVoice provides an integrated platform for voice, for conferencing, chat, and fax. The on-premise call control and management system, it's powerful yet simple solution that provides total call control and communications features. The system has the capacity to connect calls using either physical handsets and or soft clients. A soft client is just a computer phone with a headset. Additionally, it's mobile friendly, has a mobile friendly soft client, which helps connect users regardless of the location, which means I can use my cell phone as my desk phone if I'm not in my office. Staff recommends that the district purchase FortiVoice Secure Unified Communication Solution. The purchase represents the telephone upgrade that was proposed in the Proposition A Bond 2022. Estimated cost of the project is $324,580 from Layer 3 Communications via DIR contract.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Any questions? I have a question. So we're replacing how many?
There are currently 980 telephones district-wide in offices and, schools and courtesy phones, just every phone.
So you said 900?
There's 900.
And I don't need just.
980.
Okay, wow, okay. No. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Martinez on this agenda item?
No, Madam Chair, if I may, I just maybe just a general question. I know with all the emphasis on the safety, just based on that, our phones are secure, like our cell phones. There's no real dead spots really throughout the district, right? We're pretty good in terms of being able to get reception everywhere practically.
Not in every location. This room, for example, is tricky, and it all has to do with the building materials. My office, for example, has it's a metal building, and so cell phone service there can be tricky at times. And so, since you brought up safety, telephones really do represent the first line of safety.
Anybody else? Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 14. Is that Dr. Hinojosa?
Yes, Madam Chair. This particular item, in reference to the board approved back in 2021, it related to the public radio system. So these were funds that have already been set aside, and this is one of the final components to be able to have it completely online. The radios have been online, and we're working towards completing. This is one of the final steps to be able to have that trunk radio system in place and operating to its full capacity. So for the next regular scheduled board meeting, we'll be seeking for approval of an estimated cost of $88,000, which would it's still within the monies that were appropriated back in 2021 that were set aside in the maintenance tax notes for this particular project for the radio safety system.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Any questions? So Dr. Hinojosa, we had already set aside this money.
Yes, ma'am.
And we moved forward with phase 1, and now we're just closing it up with phase 2.
Yes, ma'am, exactly right. This is money that was already appropriated and approved when the district needs assessment took place. So this is just one of the final components to completing those funds that were already set aside.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Any questions or comments for Dr. Hinojosa? Okay, moving on to agenda item 15. This is you as well, Dr. Hinojosa?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the board. So this particular item was in reference to McCollum High School, specifically the 500 building. we're seeking boiler replacement. The boiler at McCollum has been our foreman and our crews have been working tirelessly to try to keep it running, but it's outdated. It is starting to corrode, and really but based on their assessment, it was not being very it's not safe to be around our students and staff. So following the procurement methods and using buy board, we did reach out to 3 vendors to get quotes, and the Brandt companies came back with the more competitive quote to be able to provide the service. And again, it would be to replace the boiler for the 500 building.
Mr. Knowles, have we used Brandt companies before?
Yes, ma'am, we have.
How many times before?
I don't have the exact number, but I can get that for you. But it's a vendor that we've used in the past.
In the past, off and on?
This year we have, they provide a very competitive price.
Okay.
But again, we go through buy board, we do we go through our procurement process. And so we do utilize the quote systems for them to bid the projects. But we're very satisfied with the work that they've done at some of our other campuses. They haven't been exclusive to all of our campuses, but they have provided service for us, and we can get that for you, that information.
And that's okay. I just wanted to know if they have been servicing us, have they been doing a good job at that?
Yes, ma'am. And that's,
Because
I'm sorry, go
as
ahead.
we all know, sometimes the best quote is not always the best service.
Right. Now, so for this particular item, and I didn't notate it in the document, but once we receive the quotes, we do review this with our foreman, who are the ones that would be the ones that oversee this, the HVAC system and the boiler system. So they are a part of the review process. We simply don't go with the lowest quote. We also include our foreman in the decision.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. I appreciate that. Any other questions for Dr. Hinojosa on agenda item 15? No? Okay, thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Moving on to agenda item 16, adjourn tonight's meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mrs. Carrillo.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second on Ms. Carrillo's motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Limon. Can we open the vote, please? Okay, it is open. Mr. Luna, are you gonna vote? Or are you staying behind? Okay, can we close the vote? So all 7 of us have voted to adjourn tonight's meeting. It is 7:33. Thank you, everybody.